Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about how to navigate in-laws. This is a question that was sent in. It's a very broad topic, but I'm going to share with you some really important things to consider when navigating in-laws in your relationship. Whether you have a great relationship with your in-laws or there's some tension and you know that there's some things that could be worked on, this video is going to be really helpful, so make sure you keep watching. Hi, I'm Catherine, a licensed therapist and a virtual coach. And before we dive in, please like this video and subscribe so that you can catch the next video. Let's be really real and normalize though at the beginning that when you are merging two families, it can be really challenging, right? You have two very different worldviews and perspectives and traditions and holidays and how you communicated and maybe where you even grew up, like all of those things, and you put them together, it can be a little bit tricky. And so I just want to first start off and normalize that, like, if things are rough for you, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's something like super wrong or your marriage is like doomed or something dramatic like that. It's just a little bit tricky and definitely something that can be worked through though. Some common struggles that I have seen in relationships include things like specific expectations revolving around holidays or traditions or different ways that you spend your time. There can be over involvement from a specific family member or specific in-laws that can kind of cause relationship issues. There can be overall tension between, you and your in-laws and your spouse and your family, or even the in-laws to each other. There can be issues there. When children come into the mix, that can create other boundary issues or communication and parenting choice complexity. And then sometimes there's a feeling of pressure that you need to, copy and paste the values and the systems that you had growing up, and maybe you want to do things differently. And sometimes that can rub your family or their family the wrong way. The good news is that you can navigate these challenges in a way that brings your relationship closer together. To share a little bit personally about my story, I grew up in America, but my husband is Ethiopian, so he grew up in Ethiopia. And so naturally, we had very, very different things that we brought to the table in our marriage, right? We had different places that we grew up. We had different traditions and ways that our family communicated, like so many things. And when we were engaged in our first marriage, it was a little bit challenging, right? Like there were things that I didn't understand why, and he didn't understand what it was that we were doing. And so we just had to really learn to communicate and appreciate the differences that both of our cultures were brought together as we were making this beautiful family unit in our marriage. We've been married almost 8 years now, and I just want to encourage you that it can really get better, even if it's not terrible, but just there's issues. I love my in-laws so much. They're incredible. I'm so thankful for them. And it's like Philip was born into my family. Everything is just such a beautiful blend now. And so I just want to kind of share that experience before we get started as well. So let's get practical. I'm going to share with you 4 really important things to keep in mind when it comes to your in-laws. The first thing that I want to say is that you should get unified before you communicate with them. So before you get vocal, I really encourage you to address things with your spouse first. It's really important that you come together as a united front and really address things together with the two of you. So if you've never had a sit-down conversation before about in-laws, I highly encourage you to do that. Here's some questions that I would consider talking through. Again, just as you kind of set the stage and foundation for having a better relationship with your in-laws. You can ask things like, what feels hard for you? What is really important for you to bring into our family from your family? You can talk about what is going really well for you, what doesn't feel difficult, what are you willing to compromise on, right? Because there might be certain things that you don't have as strong of opinion on, but they do. And so you're okay to do it their way. But again, that all needs to be talked about, just the two of you first. It often also goes over better if you each talk to your respective families when there's something to communicate about. If there's an issue with Philip, my husband, and my family, I'm going to be the one to mediate and talk with my family about what's going on, and vice versa. If I have a confusion or frustration to his family, he's going to be the one to communicate more solely to them. And part of that is just because they are probably going to hear from their own children, their blood, a little bit easier. Some people take less offense to it, get less bothered, and so it can just be a little bit easier to be here to hear and for them to be receptive. And also keep in mind that you know your family best, and so it's easier for you to know how to communicate, how they're going to hear you better. All of those things can just make things a little bit easier if you approach it that way. It's also important how you communicate, right? So let's say that Philip had a really long week at work and he doesn't want to go hang out. It's okay for us to just say, hey, we are gonna just have a family day on Saturday. Thank you so much for the invite, but we're gonna bow out this time. And that's totally fine. But again, you're just being kind with your communication to either family, and that's always an important thing to keep in mind. The goal is obviously not to win. You're not trying to make that your point the one that wins and yes, I got my point across. Like, you're just trying to be a team. You and your marriage unit, you and your spouse, and then with your in-laws. Because you didn't just marry them, you married all of the family. And so as much as it is important to talk about hard things, it's also important to, not necessarily keep the peace as in just like don't say things, but be kind, be respectful, go into it like, how can we all win together? The second thing that I want to highlight is to be proactive versus reactive in your communication. Anytime there's a big life transition coming your way, it's really helpful to communicate ahead of time. If you're thinking about having a baby, right? You could say something like, hey, for the first 72 hours, we are just going to spend time with our family. We're going to wait before we have visitors. Or, we've been thinking about it, and as the holidays are approaching, I don't know yet what we're going to do when it comes to Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever, but we're thinking about it. And when we figure it out, we're going to let you know how we're going to spend our time, how we're going to spread it out with all of the grandparents. Those kind of things are helpful because, one, you don't want them to formulate their own expectation of how things could go and they never hear from you, right? And then you mention something like the week of, that can be really hurtful and really difficult for them to work through. And also, like I said, if you give them a really, really big heads up, it's helpful because if they don't like what they're hearing, it gives them time to adjust. It gives them time to, okay, that's difficult, but this is how it's going to be, and to understand and to not be as bothered, basically. The third thing to consider is address patterns, not one-off annoyances, right? So if it just happened once and it bothered you, it's okay to let it go. It's probably better to let it go. However, it's something that has been coming up over and over and you're like, I don't think I can get past this, or this is continually happening, it's definitely time to address it. You can ask yourself these questions kind of as a mental filter to help you decide what to do about it. You can ask, is this hurting our unity, our marriage unity? Is this negatively impacting our kids if you have kids? And is this creating or has this caused resentment? If you're getting yes to those questions, it's probably a better idea to address it than just to continue to not say anything at all. And then, like I said, that resentment will just pile up. The last thing that I want to highlight that was really helpful for me in my marriage and that I want to share with you is that different does not mean disrespect. I want to say that one more time. Different does not mean disrespect. What feels intrusive to you might feel really loving or normal for them, or what feels really distant for them might feel really healthy for you. So before you label something as toxic or unhealthy, really consider, is this malicious? Get curious about what their intent is, and ask, or is this just a cultural or a familial difference? Now, just because something isn't malicious and it falls under the category of just a difference, doesn't mean that you can't address it. Right? You can say yeah, this is a cultural difference, but I can't stand it, or I don't like it, or we're not doing this. And that's fine. But I think taking a bird's eye view of the situation, getting really curious about their intent, about what's going on, can really help your reaction to things. And it can help you figure out how to address it, when to address it, with whom, all of those pieces. Something else that's really huge is to lead with curiosity, because curiosity can diffuse or prevent a lot of conflict. Let's say there's something that you don't get. Instead of going into it with are you kidding me? That's what we're gonna do? Or that's stupid, I've never heard of that before. Or something I don't wanna do that. That doesn't sound fun, that sounds dumb. That's one way of approaching it. Or you can say things I've never really thought about it like that. Can you explain why you do it like this? Or, oh, is there a story behind that specific tradition? Right? Two very different approaches. Going in it with curiosity, one, allows you to hear with an open mind what they have to say. And who knows, you might hear it and be like, oh my gosh, that's so special. I can't wait to incorporate that into our children's lives. Or I definitely want to do that. That is so cool. I didn't know that was the reason why. What it also does on the flip side, if you go into it really critical, it can hurt their feelings, obviously. It can make it feel like you don't care about what's important to them, and then that opens the door for conflict. So lead with curiosity. Now that might feel like a lot, so I also want to leave you with something very practical. You can, after watching this video, you can go and sit down with your spouse and talk through some of these questions. Where do we feel the tension right now in our family? What boundary would bring us peace? Who needs to communicate that and how? and how can we do so respectfully? You obviously don't have to solve every issue right then and there with one conversation, but it's better to chip away at it so that you are moving the needle and building a better, healthier relationship as a marriage unit and with your in-laws. I also want to gently encourage that you don't have to do this alone, right? We are meant to live life in community. And so if you're really struggling and you just feel like you need outside support, I encourage to talk to a pastor or a small group leader or one of your dear friends, a mentor. If you're like, we need to pursue counseling, go for it. Like, these are real life issues that need to be addressed and talked through, and it is okay to do that with someone else's help as well. You can check out the description. I'll have a link for working one-on-one with me. If you're like, I just really relate to you and would love to work together, I might have an opening. So just reach out and we can talk through if it would be a great fit, because I'd love to help and support you in this area. I hope that you found this helpful. If there are other things that you're curious about or have comments on, please put those in the comments. I'd love to read them. I could maybe make another video if there's more things that we should talk about within this topic, because I know it's pretty broad. Thanks so much for being here. Make sure that you like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.